Hi guys, Josh here from CBM Reviews, and today I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler-free review of Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, this movie was directed by Ron Howard, and I think it's a pretty good movie. But, let me back up. First, I want to go ahead and tell you that I am a huge Star Wars fan, have been for as long as I can remember. I know a whole lot of stuff that they don't know, that they don't ever mention in the movies. Races of aliens and all sorts of stuff. That being said, with this, I judge the film a little bit more critically than most, but nonetheless, I think anybody will enjoy this film. Now, before I even sat down in the seat, there were a couple concerns I had. First, it wasn't really a concern so much as an annoyance. This could have been released on May 4th. It wasn't. It was an opportunity missed. I understand that Disney doesn't want its properties to compete. Obviously, Avengers Infinity War is a huge, huge undertaking for them. It's taken over 10 years to get together. It has been incredibly financial, both in terms of success, but also in how much of an investment it was. And they didn't want Solo to either get drowned out or compete with it. So spacing the two movies apart makes sense. I kind of wish they would have done it a little bit differently, but this is the way they've gone ahead and done that. Next, moving on, I will tell you I was a little bit disappointed about the trailers. Now, if you had to ask me what I thought about the trailers, I would tell you just unforgettable. I don't really remember what the trailers were. None of them really felt kind of Star Warsy. I know that sounds silly, but none of them pulled me in like a traditional Star Wars movie would. I don't really remember seeing, for example, the Empire in any of it. Now, I understand this is the beginnings of the Empire, as far as what we know in the classic storyline, but nonetheless, could have been more prominent, at least in the trailers. In addition to that, the trailers don't give a real good vibe of, is it an action movie? Is it a comedy? There's a little bit of everything. Maybe they were showing you too much, and so there wasn't enough of a memorable impression. I really can't remember the trailers. So going into this movie, I didn't expect a ton. Truth be told, The Last Jedi and Force Awakens both disappointed me. Last Jedi probably more so. Anybody who knows the Mary Poppins scenes knows exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about. But that being said, there have been some good things also with the new movies. I really enjoyed Rogue One. It had a different tone to it, but it was clearly a Star Wars movie. This movie feels very much like a Star Wars movie, so it's not even so much a tone thing, it's just the trailers didn't sell it right. When we start out with this movie, we see Han on Corellia, and he is old enough to get into a mess. Obviously, as Obi-Wan would have described it from A New Hope, it is a den of scum and villainy. It is the worst of the worst. These guys are all petty thieves and crime syndicates and crime bosses and, you know, pushing whatever they can. And it is very much a dog-eat-dog type of a world, no pun intended. That being said, Han desperately wants to get off the planet, but he's not alone. He wants to take Qi'ra, his love interest, with him. With Qi'ra, she's played by Emilia Clarke. Probably know her as Daenerys from Game of Thrones. But anyway, she goes ahead and she's on the planet with him, and they make a plan to get off the planet. When Han gets off the planet, he has to go ahead and try to figure out what to do next. Because he is on the run from others, and this is something that we would expect in a Star Wars film. Again, not going to spoil it, but I will tell you he's on the run. What's he going to do? He ends up enlisting, of all things. So we get to see him join the Empire. We get to see him become a pilot. We don't see a lot of that, but at least we see some of it. So it is in there. Truth be told, one of the things we see much more of, which mattered more, is Chewie gets a ton of screen time. And that really matters because it lets the Chewbacca and Han relationship go ahead and develop. And when we see in the original movies, that is really almost as iconic as like his blaster rifle or just kind of the demeanor that Harrison Ford always had. One of the things with this film, I can't remember the name of the actor they cast for Han, but I really did actually enjoy him. I was kind of nervous, both he and the Lando Calrissian counterpart for Billy Dee Williams. I was a little concerned. Both those guys are suave and charming, and they have this panache to them, and I was worried that they might not be able to capture that. For the most part, I thought they did all right. But one of the things that is a little telling for me is they weren't my favorite characters in this movie. It's kind of sad to me that this movie is about Han Solo, but he's not my favorite character in the movie. That is actually Chewbacca. Chewbacca was amazing in this movie. I was happy in pretty much every scene he did. He is a force to be reckoned with. He is menacing. He is powerful. He's got a very good intro. He is integral to the team. And he has some of the best action and combat sequences that we see in the movie. I remember watching this and feeling like I was watching a prize fight or something. I wanted to stand up and just start cheering for Chewie. I was so happy to see him just kicking butt all over the place. We get to see him with melee. We get to see him with brawling, just slamming dudes. It's great. It's absolutely great. That was one of my favorite things by far. In addition to that, we also got to see a character named Beckett. Beckett was played by Woody Harrelson, and Beckett is basically what Han Solo will become and wants to become. And we get to see a whole lot from Beckett. He's a gunslinger, he's whirling his pistols around, kind of like the classic Western gunslinger would, and he's shooting stuff, and he's also an infamous scoundrel type, and he really is kind of a mentor for Han in this journey. I really liked him. He was another character I liked more than Solo. In addition to that, as the movie progresses, we get to see more of Qi'ra obviously develop, because there was some time apart between her and Han, and that was one of the things that really was interesting, was there's a definite shift in her character. We see Han, for the most part, grow and change, and part of this is Han is figuring out who he is, who he's going to associate himself with, what his role in the world is, because he's never really been off Corellia. Actually, I'm fairly confident he hadn't been off Corellia. And so, what am I going to do in this great big universe? I want to get a ship that I can pilot, and I can go ahead and do all this great stuff. And so, he goes ahead and does that. While the Empire, like I said, is there, it's kind of in the background, but that's important because the Empire is not fleshed out and carved out effectively the way it was on in the original movies in episode 4, 5, and 6. In this, there is actually a little piece of dialogue where they talk about, we're on this planet because they're going to submit to Empire rule. Okay, you get the idea. This is still the conquering phase. And so Han's story isn't about this. When in the original movies, he was hesitant to join up with the Resistance and the Rebellion. Well, this is just part of this. For a long time, he's done his own thing and he could ignore it. And so it makes sense in this movie that he was able to ignore it. Like I said, trailers are different than the movie themselves, so I understand why they didn't put it in the trailer, but it, lost a little bit of that Star Wars vibe by not having more of the Imperial presence, at least in the trailer. With this movie, in addition to, obviously, Han, Beckett, Chewie, and Qi'ra, the other two characters that I would say are kind of the main characters would be Lando and L3-37. L3-37 very much reminded me of the droid from Rogue One. Very capable, definitely its own personality, and integral to some parts of the story, which I thought was interesting. We got to see places that we didn't necessarily see before, and we got to see one of the most iconic things we could about a Han Solo movie. Well, obviously, the Kessel Run is iconic for him. He completed the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. Not only is there a story reason for him doing it, which made sense, but we got to see it, and that was one of the best visual space sequences we got. Obviously, the special effects were great. The music was good and in line with Star Wars. I will say there was a different composer than John Williams, but the hints and the homages are definitely paid to the original score, and some of the original music is used as well, as I recall. With this movie, it had lots of great action. I found myself laughing plenty of times, but at appropriate times. One of the big criticisms I've heard, for example, another recent film was Thor Ragnarok, is sometimes the humor broke up important moments, and it didn't really let you have the character growth, or it didn't let you connect. This movie is smart. It doesn't do that. This movie has humor, but they're in places where you can have humor. A lot of times it's the unexpected event that happens after we didn't think it would, or it's some miscommunication or something, but it's great nonetheless. This movie, we get to see a whole lot of stuff, and by the end, we get to know who Han Solo is, how he and Chewbacca got together, what's happened with Qi'ra, who presumably is his first real love interest. We've got to see kind of his mentor and role model Beckett and what happened there. We've got to see how does he end up having the Millennium Falcon and meeting with Lando Calrissian. And we generally just get to get a feel for who Solo is. This is a very good origin movie. This is what you would expect from it. As a standalone movie, it's really good. And then as a movie in the Star Wars universe, it's great. It fits right in, and in a lot of ways fit in better than the recent iterations in Star Wars. For a lot of reasons, I think this is great. Go watch it. I think you'll really enjoy it.